Welcome to the show, Miss Ines.
Thank you.
I would like to ask you a little bit about your involvement with this particular production and how you became involved with it.
So I'm the director of The Living, and the play is about a community post-genocide when the perpetrators return home to the community and how they figure out to keep living together, where the victims and the perpetrators are living in the same community. And I've spent some time in Africa, and Colleen Wagner, the playwright, has also spent a lot of time in Africa. And all of the stories in the play are true stories, so it's a documentary play. And this is an amazing opportunity to sort of combine my love of theater and directing and this incredible story that is about impossible love and transformative justice.
And the story came from Rwanda, I understand. Can you tell us a little bit about the background?
Yes, so all of the stories come from Rwanda and Uganda, and they were stories that were told to Colleen. In part, they were told to her when she brought a play to Rwanda, which was called The Monument, which was a Governor General award-winning play. And the people came up to her and said, "That's my story that you're telling." And that story was about former Yugoslavia. And so they kept telling her stories and saying, "I want you to tell our story." So this play is about that, and in particular it's about transformative justice, which is this amazing kind of justice where in this country we practice restorative justice, where the victim and the perpetrator meet each other, and the perpetrator says, "I'm sorry," and the victim says, "I accept your apology," and then they're to move on. In transformative justice, there's no responsibility and no onus for an apology or for the victim to accept an apology or to even forget. And what happens in transformative justice is the perpetrator is responsible for the victim. So one of the stories in the play is a man has raped this woman and given her AIDS, and he is responsible for taking her to the clinic every day, and making sure that she's okay. And if she's not, he returns to prison. And what happens in transformative justice is that the two people begin to see each other as real human beings. As you know, with all genocides around the world, the way genocide starts is that one group sees another group as non-human. We look at the Holocaust, you can look at the Armenian genocide, so many, where they're called snakes, cockroaches, infidels. But when two people see each other as human beings, then genocide in fact cannot happen. So in the play we focus on a couple of these stories, and it's really an amazing story, and it's a true story. And I was telling my friends just a moment ago about the featured story. The woman has been doing transformative justice for 10 years, and now she worries about the man who picks her up every day and takes her to the hospital. She sees him like a brother. She worries about him because he's depressed and he's sad. And so it's a lot of people don't know about it, and that's an important part of the play. The other thing that's really interesting in the story is this impossible love. So there were the Hutus and the Tutsis, as you know, in Rwanda. We've chosen in our play to place it in a nondescript village. I've chosen to cast it multiracially, so there are people of all different ethnic and racial backgrounds in the play, so that we can kind of lift off the whole story from Rwanda. And so there's a story about a young man and a young woman who were essentially enemies during the genocide, and they were in love before the genocide, and he is returned after being in prison for 8 years, and they find a way back to each other again, and that's sort of the hope and the heart of the piece as well.
And so this particular play has a hopeful message, would you say so?
It does. It has, I mean, as hard as it has been to work on this play and this beautiful summer that we're having, to research the genocide and look at why do people do horrible things to other human beings, ultimately the message is extremely hopeful, is that and one of the things that we learned when we did the research is we would say, well, why would the victim agree to this? If someone has destroyed your whole family, has raped you, given you AIDS, why would you ever agree to this? And the women say that they cannot live with the burden. They can't live with the burden of hate and anger. It's just too exhausting. And ultimately they have to figure out how to move on for their children, move on for their community, and move on for themselves. So yes, ultimately I believe the message is hugely hopeful, difficult, really difficult to be inside this material, but it is ultimately profoundly hopeful.
Now, being that this is a very serious theme, can you tell us how you perceive the role of the artist and the art form in terms of this particular drama, and what would you recommend in that respect?
It's a really good question. I think the most important thing is that the audience connects with the characters, so that it's important that the acting is very authentic and very true, and so that when the audience watches, that they're not reading a headline about the genocide, because I think people read about the genocide and we kind of tune out because it's just so horrible. I mean, there's genocides happening right now with Rohingya and Myanmar, and happening in Syria. We're finding mass graves, and I think we read those headlines and we tune out because it's just so difficult to even comprehend. But when you're doing a play as an artist, you're seeing real people, and you are connecting to those real people, and you fall in love with those people, and as a result, the story touches you in a very different way, and that actually means something. It's like they become real to you versus reading something in a newspaper.
I would like to now ask you a little bit about yourself. I know that you are a director, a filmmaker, and can you tell us a little bit about your background and basically your involvement in both film and theater?
Every time I do a film, I want to go back into the theater, and every time I work in the theater, then I want to go back into film. So there's things about each of those mediums that I love, and I love being able to go back and forth between the two of them. And there's flexibility in each of them that is very different, right? So here I have 10 actors, and they've all agreed to be part of this show, essentially for no money, a cut of the box. I could never do a play with 10 people and with a professional theater company unless it was a huge professional theater company. And with film, I can write the work, and I can gather a team together, and I can make those films, and I can do it about subject matters that are really important to me. So yes, I think they feed each other, and I couldn't imagine doing one without the other. And just as my interest in dramaturgical work is, both in plays and film work, is really important to me.
From the acting point of view, do you think that it is more difficult for an actor to actually perform live in a theatrical production as opposed to being directed in a film?
I think they're really, really different. They're really, really different. I mean, the great thing about film is you only have to do it once. You only have to get it right once. In theater, you have to be able to repeat it. But in film, there's so much technology. You've got to have your foot at a sandbag. You've got to hit a mark. I'm talking to you, but I'm actually talking to a spot on the wall. So in some ways, theater is much more organic, but there is a real responsibility to have to repeat every night. Well, in film, you only have to do it once. So again, I think it's really important for actors to move back and forth between those two mediums to be really evolved and as strong artists.
Can you tell us a little bit about your next project?
I don't know. I'm working on a project called the Love Project, and it might be a film, and it might be a play, or it might be a completely interactive, immersive thing. And I'm working on it with Colleen, and it really is about love, and what does love mean, and how do you know you're in love, and what does love feel like. So she's in Stratford. We'll be in Stratford in September, starting that project. So that's the next thing that she and I are going to work on together.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so very much for joining us, and all the best to you.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.